Welcome, one and all, to another chill and downright cool episode of Dave's Dungeon, as I bring you another installment of Spooktober movie review. Tonight we have Animation Appreciation Night. This time we are featuring The Spine of Night, a movie from 2021. Now, a small note before I get off into this. Some of you may be aware there is another animated feature that is much like this one. I'm talking about 1983's Fire and Ice. If you're heavily into animation like I am, make sure you've seen Fire and Ice, but I might suggest you do something a little odd. See it before you watch The Spine of Night. As a matter of fact, I might suggest you make it a double feature, because as you watch Fire and Ice, you'll start to get the feeling that it is, how do we say, Fire and Ice walked so that the Spine of Night could run, and the Spine of Night definitely has its nods and homages, so it could be a little confusing or awkward to watch if you go for the newer one first. Legendary writer and director Ralph Bakshi partnered with Frank Franzetta, legendary illustrator, partnered to present what I would call a masterpiece of early animation techniques and talents in order to create a cinematic marvel of a spectacle. I say don't sleep on Fire and Ice, currently available on Tubi or for free on the Amazon Prime app, which is convenient if you want to watch them both there. I highly recommend turning this single feature into a double if you have the 81 minutes extra to spare. You will not be disappointed. Both have equally action-packed and haunting, terrifying scenes that will have you on the edge of your seat. I would say my most negative thoughts about Fire and Ice, it feels like it's one of the stories Sod might tell the Guardian. But that really isn't any problem for me, if I'm honest. And you could do something rather neat if you wanted to. You could watch it mixed in, as if it were one of the tales she does tell, if that sort of thing tends to bother you. So, let's get off into this. This one was written and directed by Philip Gillott and Morgan Galen King. MVPs go to Richard E. Grant as the Guardian, Lucy Lawless as Sod, Patton Oswald as Lord Parenton, Betty Gabriel as Faye Agura, Joe Manganiello as Mongrel, and Jordan Douglas Smith as Galsor. You may not recognize but a few names on this list, but every single one of these actors deserves a bow and a standing ovation. So we begin from space, the final frontier, to titties, the first frontier. You can see from the very start of this movie why I love animation. No limits. 1 minute you're in space, the next you're a wizard climbing a mountain, staring straight at a giant skull larger than the peak itself. I do love animation for this very reason. You may pull off things in animation that live action real life might look at you funny about. And in my opinion, animation makes things the greater for having tried it, not the lesser. So, these movies, though, I want to say, are such a visual spectacle and treat, so make sure you turn down the lights and set the mood right, because The Spine of Night is magnificent from the moment it opens. Now, I will say, the cell shading on it is very A Scanner Darkly or The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker sometimes. And that tends to differ really heavily from anime style as well, but the backgrounds and the effects really are dazzling and illustrate why a story like this is aided and served by being made with animation over live action actors and filming. Plus, no takes. It's a draw and done on the filmmaking as opposed to 50 or so takes, at least with filmmaking. So Richard E. Grant and Lucy Lawless carry this film on their backs the entire runtime as we meet the Guardian and the one who climbs the mountain, the witch or wizard of the bog, Sod. So their fans will be happy. Meanwhile, Patton Oswalt and Jordan Douglas Smith get to choose the scenery of any given scene in such satisfying ways. And both give truly memorable performances, especially Jordan Douglas Smith as Galsur. And all this starts over a flower. If every time I smoked or chewed some bud of weed I got magic powers, I might understand why weed is illegal and why the Guardian is so adamant about protecting man from the flower by protecting the flower from the greedy hands of men. Sod, Queen of the Swamps of all sorrows, and High Priestess of Bastal, God of the swamps and secret to the power of the bloom, performs a ritual amongst her people. When she is attacked and captured by a man known as Mongrel, servant of Lord Parenton. Parenton wants to make a name for himself by getting rid of the swamps, the swamp people, generally everybody. Not a very likable guy. Very burn it all down, if you ask me. But Mongrel tells him of Sod's magic. And Sod gives it to him. Yeah, that's right. Fuck you, Parenton. Taste yoga fire. Fortunately or unfortunately, The blue bloom of the gods had spread and fallen into Sod's hands and formed the source of her magic. Too bad for her. Galsur is a genius, jealous, conniving, backstabbing little worm who figured it out and decided, more for me, betrayal. And after Sod tells us how she died in the swamp, and how the swamp lovingly swallowed her up, and how Galsur escaped with his bloom back to the scholars of the Pantheon Library, the Guardian reveals his face, to which I say he could use some of Sod's moisturizer, as he looks quite dry after all these years. The Pantheon, it turns out, values knowledge and books above all, including human life. Too bad for Galsur. Not really a moral sort, even though they have every capability to be. We find out Galsur was imprisoned for his efforts upon his return, and he is to blame for one Grand Inquisitor, Uruk, rising to power, and his refusals to aid the people of Pyre. Turns out, Galsur tricks Uruk into finding him and bringing him the knowledge he requires, nay, indeed needs, in order to control the bloom. Because when he took it from Sod, he took it from her body, not because he asked her for it nicely. In exchange, though, Uruk wants a share of the power. But we know how this goes. Since when have you ever known a wizard to be good at sharing anything? Now all that both of them need is more blood. Lots and lots more blood. At no point in a hero's journey or story, if you ever hear them ask or say, "We need blood," at no point in a hero's journey is this ever a good thing for you to hear. And at no part anywhere are you supposed to ever drain a town of its blood and that be a good thing. Nah, this sounded sketchy from the moment Galsur proposed it. Leave it to the one who is supposed to be so smart, smarter than Galsur, to make the most foolish blunder of all, while the actual smart fellow sat around getting everyone else to do his dirty work. So Grand Inquisitor Uruk gets all hopped up on the sudsy powers of necromancy and forgets to avoid the all-seeing eye of the gods and the cosmos. Meanwhile, Galsur is freed, having unlocked the bloom's true power for himself. He begins amassing more knowledge and power using the bloom's magics. The Guardian did not like this and gets quite grumpy. my man just wanted to take a nap and let this be someone else's problem. Too bad for him. He was the man for the job. Luckily, though, this is all but over. 'Cause Sod is here to tell him how this one finishes. Galsaur begins amassing an army and marching it across the lands of Pyre, bringing subjugation and death to every man, woman, and child across the kingdoms. This is the happy fun portion of the film, where you get some really brutal kills, situations, and rather tragic endings. If you didn't hate Galsaur now, the movie really does ask if you aren't a monster too. An assassin takes a shot at Galsaur, leaving behind a single piece of the bloom in what is probably the saddest story of them all. And Sod would have a story from the Guardian. And the Guardian tells us of the first gods and how they invented something called war. And as they were playing with it, one god was slain, and its head was cut off, instantly filling with both light and dark possibility before landing on the mountains of the world. From the dreams of the dying god's head were born more and more gods until the last and final dream of the dying god bore man into the world. And of course, from there, it was peachy keen, sunshine, rainbows. We all live in a yellow submarine that Clifford the big red dog sleeps in and dreams up the existence of all reality within. But we know that's not how things stay for very long. The cycle continues. Gods kill gods. Gods kill man. Man beseeches gods to fix things, and he refuses. So, man kills gods. Yeah, it gets there. And of course, when all else is left, man then turns on man. Same shit, different dimension, I guess. It's at this point in the Guardian story, we, the audience, realize that it's the Guardian's fault that the bloom spread, and that the world was brought to peril. Because, as he says, it was a pretty uninterrupted line of defense up till that point, but he just had to blow that pollen into the wind, didn't he? Pretty uninterrupted line. Only like Maxwell steaming, it can't last. But damn it, you had one job, Guardian, and you blew it. Fucking embarrassing. Your man really wants to be dead now. But as we all know, the story isn't done yet. Apparently this was all supposed to happen, because 3 Uxan daredevils sneak aboard one of Galsaur's airships as it raids the Uxan capital, in order to try and put an end to Gulsor, which is nuts if you ask me, because the bloom is letting him heal basically any wound he suffers and letting him resurrect his army over and over again, to the point where he's deploying tactics that are rather brutal even to his own soldiers' survival. Unluckily for him, these are rogues, and we all know a wizard's one weakness is a rogue, and Uxon sent 3 of them, which I would say was just enough to get this job done, both of destroying his castle and freeing the bloom from Gulsor's control. Enough, at least, to resurrect Sod and send her up the mountains after all those years. I would hate to have to imagine the hangover on that resurrection. And of course, while he did suffer the explosion of his fire airship and castle and blooms and everything else, Gulsor isn't dead yet and isn't ready to give up the ghost. But he knows there's one last remaining bloom on top of the mountains, where Sod and the Guardian are. But unluckily for him, Sod's already made it to the Guardian's bloom, where she takes it from him and gives him peace at last in the end, for doing a job at least somewhat honorably and well done all these years. But it's a lesson in karma and a bit of bad luck for Gulsor and the rest of the former Guardians on that mountain, because the one final use of the bloom is to bring all of those undead warriors back to defend the night one final time, in an ending that only animation could deliver. Hope blooms eternal, it would seem. And I gotta say, so too do the frights, scares, screams, and blood. But that's gonna do it for this time around the campfire light. So, night, night, sleep tight. Oh, before I run off, don't let me forget this. Don't let me do this. I'll restart that. Our last episode is going to be on October 31st. I'll post it up. But then I don't know. I'm still trying to work it out whether I'm going to do a live stream or a space or something or maybe I'll just do one final video and give y'all a finale wrap up and tell y'all how we did. How did we do? And a see you next year. But that'll be for Thursday, October 31st. Wow, this October's flying by. But without any further ado, night, night. Sleep tight. And don't let the cosmic horrors scare you in the night. Sweet dreams.